TFP, the fan's perspective.
Oh, here we go.
Yes, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Lowering the wrong one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Fans Perspective. I am your host, charlietrix, and I'm here with my brother,
Remise. What's good, everybody?
What's good, everybody? Jhanboom is not in the building today, but we're going to give him a shout out anyway. What up, Big John?
What's good, Boom?
Today is Saturday, May 13th. It's a beautiful, actually, it's not really that beautiful out. It's a hot day today. It's like 80 something degrees out, but it's gloomy as hell.
Gray.
It is a beautiful Saturday anyway. Nobody's working. We are on. You are live in here with us. So that's cool. That's popping.
Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. We love you to death. And all the mothers out there, my sisters, cousins, aunts, grandmas, and all that stuff.
There's a lot of mothers in our family.
The family is big. Shout out to everybody. And so this week we're just going to get right into it. We want to drop these stories back to back and kind of flow through this episode. And to start it off, I found this really cool story about someone that I admire. This is actually a story out of TMZ, and it's about Fat Joe. So I read the story, saw it at first glance, took a look at it, and I thought this was great. Fat Joe is taking on the healthcare industry, specifically hospitals and their billing practices. So let me just read a little bit from the article for people watching. Like I said, this is from TMZ. I'll put the link in the description. So Fat Joe is taking a break from ripping mics to tear into America's healthcare system and the politicians allowing hospitals to essentially steal from patients. Joe Crack recorded this incredibly powerful message last month in the Bronx, calling out healthcare crooks for hiding hospital prices, something that's actually illegal, he points out. But no one is policing that system. So Joe teamed up with Power to the Patients to demand a change, and you can tell he's feeling this he's feeling this as much as any verse he's ever recorded. Basically, his quoted statement is, "When we can't see or compare prices, hospitals charge us whatever they want. They're robbing us." The Bronx icon has some A-list companies in the fight for patient rights. TMZ mentions, you could recall, Susan Sarandon and Cynthia Erivo filmed their own PSAs last year for Power for the Patients, which also aired during the Oscars. And it says here, we're told Fat Joe is so serious about this campaign, he'll be attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner later this month. By the time you've seen this, the White House Correspondents' Dinner had already happened. So I'm sure he was there doing his thing. But last quote from Fat Joe on this. He says, right now, millions across the country are being dragged into debt because they're blindsided by the cost of medical bills. And his goal is to remind communities of their rights while demanding elected officials do something to end this injustice.
Good on Fat Joe, man. From ripping mics to tearing down the...
Really good on Fat Joe. I mean, anybody who follows these situations knows how important and good it is to have these larger than life voices get into the fight and make some noise. It just draws attention.
That's what it is, attention. It's a game of attention and getting people involved and seeing these as something worth taking seriously and something that can be changed. A lot of times I feel like people look at these issues and kind of just take it for granted. You know, like I've been getting hospital bills recently and it's like, luckily it's just my copay. I got good insurance, but literally I look at it and it starts off at like $300 for something I wind up paying $30. So I don't really care as much. I'm still pissed paying $30 just to get looked at. But at the same time, it's like, what the hell costs $300 for that? I was in the doctor's office for 5 minutes, and that's a $300 bill.
Yeah.
I'm only paying $30, so I don't really feel it like that. But it's weird.
Yeah, and in this case like this, what they're talking about with the hidden bills is, if you ever seen a hospital bill for, after getting some treatment for something, you'll notice weird charges on there. They got all this random weird shit that they put on there, stuff that doesn't make any sense. And the worst part is that, a lot of people don't even look at these bills. They just get a bill in the mail and they pay it. Or they pay their portion of it if they're lucky enough to have insurance. And sometimes the portion that you don't see is massive.
Yeah.
Someone's going in. When we compare prices for surgeries, first of all, they are different depending on where you have the procedure. So there's no one specific cost. You go to hospital A, it costs X. You go to hospital B, it costs Y. So that's a problem right there. And the fact that there's no transparency, that's another issue. So I just think it's a great thing to see him tackle this.
It reminds me, I don't know how true it is or not, but I remember hearing, like, if you get a hospital bill and then you ask for the itemized bill, you can wind up getting things taken off that bill because there's so much BS on it. But I don't know, like, that's kind of just, I don't know if it's urban legend. It's not some shit that I've researched, but I remember hearing that.
Yeah, no, it's a common thread. There was a point several years ago, this was before the pandemic and the lockdown, when, and I don't know if it's still active, but someone had come out with an app which you could punch in a procedure and it would give you a list of places and what they charge in your area.
That's
so
dope.
Before even going, you can kind of have an idea like, okay, this place charges this place charges that. Because one of the big ones that comes up that I was looking at was hip replacement. Hip replacement in like the U.S. is dramatically, well, I guess it's going to be everything in the U.S., but it's so dramatically more expensive to do here than other places. So, the fact that somebody at one point thought of making an app so you can on your own figure out what the hell these prices are is just a testament to why this is a big issue. And, again, shout out to Fat Joe for taking time, obviously busy man doing a million things, and finds this an important enough topic for him to get in the fight for. So,
and this is another example where Medicare for All could really help, because you consolidate the billing into one place, and then you have more negotiating power to kind of handle these sorts of ridiculous billing practices with a little more strength.
Yeah, and you know what? Speaking on Medicare for All is going to tie into a topic we're going to talk about in a little while. So I'm going to hold off on going too deep on that. But just to add on, Medicare for All, definitely a fast track avenue to doing it in the U.S. But to put this out there too, the goal is, for me and for a lot of leftists, is universal health coverage for all people in America, and should just be everywhere in this goddamn planet. But, it doesn't necessarily have to have the name Medicare for All if that's what people are so upset about. And the fact is, I don't care if it's the Canadian system or the German system or, a South American system. Regardless, if a place has better healthcare coverage than we do as Americans, we should be leaning in that direction.
Yeah, we should mimic what works.
Yeah, and especially when you look at it by costs. The whole how you going to pay for it should no longer be a question. That has already been answered. If you're still asking that question, you're not researching this topic. You just dig just a very little bit. And for opposition to this, which tends to come from the right, you can find right-wing studies now proving this. Actually, the first studies that were done proving that a universal healthcare system will dramatically save money and have better outcome, period. End of story.
Yes, sir. That's what it is. And it's not even going to be discussed in the next presidential elections, I don't think.
No.
That's not even on the table if it's going to be Biden versus
Biden's not for it, period. End of story.
That's so crazy.
Anyway, peace. Shout out Fat Joe.
So speaking on that presidential election tip, I figured we should discuss the big controversy this week, which was that CNN had Trump on to do a town hall which basically wound up acting like a kickoff, show for his next run for president. They basically threw him on with a audience full of potential Republican voters, like likely Republican voters, who laughed when he made ridiculous comments, who like booed bad questions. It was very friendly to Trump, which allowed him to say a lot of crazy ass things. So a lot of people have come out and said, we said last time that the amount of platforming they did for his bad ideas wound up giving him, I think, billions of dollars worth of free media coverage. And it helped catapult him to winning the nomination. And people are either saying that they didn't learn from this, or what I think is more likely, that Chris Licht, the new CEO, is kind of leaning into that. We want to take some viewers from the Fox News audience. I call it the Fox Newsification of CNN. And just to throw it in, the reporter who did the questions was formerly a Daily Wire reporter. That's where she got her start, according to Emma Vigilant. So when we take that into, it just feels very like it was very friendly to Trump again. But they said, like, what they're posing now for people who are like, why would you even platform him like that, is this guy's running for president. He's the leading candidate for the Republican Party. You need to hear his ideas so that either they pose it like so that you know what you don't want. You got to know how bad he is. But to me, and I made a list of the things he said, none of them were surprising to me. I've heard him run this whole script 1,000 times because he's got one script. And I don't think the reporter did a good job. Caitlin, I can't think of her last name, but Collins?
Collins.
Yeah, Caitlin Collins. She was not prepared for this, exactly what everybody's heard him say for the last 2 years or so since he lost. So anyway, I wanted to run through some of the claims and crazy things he got out with, because this is stuff that I think does matter when the eventual presidential elections come up.
Yeah, and just to add on before you go into some of the specific comments, first of all, I thought initially when I heard the controversy, you know what, everybody gets the right to speak, you speak. And I knew it could be bad, but I was a little 50-50 on it until I saw some of it. And then I thought, you know what, this is as bad as everybody's been saying. I mean, it was a pathetic display. And I'm sorry for people who are Trump fans and right wingers watching this shit. That shit was horrendous. CNN has come out already saying they were going to be more right wing friendly. Mm-hmm. And this was the full, no, we're going to go this direction hardcore now. And Anderson Cooper coming out and giving his response for why they did it was almost as pathetic as watching some of that town hall. And I'd say it's pathetic because they have the audience full with these people who are going to cheer at everything he says. He spews direct lies, provable bullshit that has been debunked, and the host, a tiny speck of pushback, gets steamrolled and then moves on like it's no big deal. I know you're going to get into that right now. Let him say
a lot of crazy shit.
It was almost like, somebody said it best. It was like on January 7th, somebody stuffed Trump into a time capsule and then he hopped out last night and he just picked up right where he left off.
With the same exact responses. Like, the questions, you know what response you're going to elicit, because he's continued to lie no matter what new evidence comes out or what proof he's false. He's saying false things. It doesn't matter. There's no repercussions of it. Instead, he gets prime time on CNN for some ratings they're chasing.
But the thing is, like, there are some facts that, we know the fucking answer to. Mm-hmm. He spews it in their face, and for the host to just roll right along.
Well, and then the excuse is that he says so much nonsense that he's hitting you with like 4 lies at a time, and you're trying to get a word in edgewise to block one of the lies, and 2 of them have slipped by already before you get to the wait, because that's how rapid fire this dude's bullshit is. But like he said at one point that they were aborting babies after the babies had been delivered.
Yeah.
No. What the hell are you talking about? That is complete nonsense. He's just spewing garbage. She didn't push back on that.
Yeah,
but
they kill babies right after they're born.
Just nuts.
Right after they're born. So direct murder.
Let me read this whole list off. I think these have real implications towards the country. And, also, I want to point out, I don't think that he's just openly lying. I think Trump is delusional. He is a delusional old man. As much as they like to trash Biden for being a deluded old man, I also think Trump is very obviously absolutely lost it, all right? He's Feinstein level at this point. But, all right, so during the town hall, Trump continued to claim the election was rigged, which is something that got Fox News into a $750 billion lawsuit settlement just recently. He defended the rioters from January 6th and played that up like they were doing their patriotic duty and made excuses for it. I just want to throw this in. CNN itself reported that roughly 114 Capitol Police officers were hurt in that riot. Trump celebrated the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and he sounded prepared to codify more aggressive pro-life legislation, though he didn't completely commit to that. Now, that one's important because it seems like the Roe versus Wade overturning by the Supreme Court is something that spurred a lot of people to vote against Republican nominees in recent elections. It's helped Democrats win seats, and he's actually pushing like it's a victory, just to throw that out there. He just, the day before, he lost a libel case against a woman over sexual assault that, allegedly happened, that a jury said probably did, and that he committed libel about it. He went on to insult her throughout his answer about that, and then the crowd laughed and egged him on. He said he could settle the Ukraine-Russia conflict in 24 hours, and that the war would have never happened if he were elected. So, that is literal deluded thinking, obvious nonsense that people just chuckle at. But yeah, if you're pretending to want to run for president, you sound delusional. He also wouldn't explain how any of this would work, except that Putin's his homie, and he talked to Zelensky. They have things they want. Yeah, sketchy. He also would not commit to saying he wants Ukraine to win, despite Ukraine being who's invaded. His solution to making things affordable, to making the country affordable again, was to go, drill, baby, drill. Just hit some tagline and the crowd goes wild. Absolutely pathetic. Not even a great answer. Sorry. Energy independence by drilling for more oil. Great solution, buddy. He repeated the false claim that the records he took from Mar-a-Lago were declassified. They weren't. This is clear. Any type of coverage you've looked on this issue will tell you, no, he didn't just... I dream of Genie blink and it's declassified. Sorry, that's not how it works, dummy. You were, never mind. He also said, finally, this one's kind of crazy. They asked him about defaulting on the U.S. debt and the current situation with the economy and potential, the debt ceiling not being raised. And he tried to give this answer that was like, well, it's going to happen eventually, might as well happen now. Doesn't make any sense from any point of view of understanding how this stuff works.
Yeah.
Is an absolute ridiculous answer, but it does seem like he was sort of sending a little message to his base and to McCarthy and the GOP to hold firm and keep the debt, to keep the economy over a barrel over this debt ceiling debate, which is a bullshit debate that I know you wanted to get into.
Yes.
Next. So I just wanted to bring that up. But when you collect all of that, that makes for an awful presidential showing. Like, that dude is not qualified to run for president. I'm sorry. If you're a fan, watch The Apprentice reruns. Cut this shit out. This dude shouldn't be running the country. He's an absolute... I mean, this is dumbass answers. Those are deluded answers. Those don't help. Sorry.
No, I mean, there's two things going on there, right? When I watch that is this delusion coming out of this fucking man and this delusion of the people watching this. And I think we're past... the whole, like, there's a handful of people with the I still believe this stuff, but for the majority of the people, it's I know it's bullshit, but I don't care. And that's the scary part.
I've read some people saying it's an exercise. They think it's exercising power. We get to decide what the truth is or what the facts are, and we get to do it how we want, which is, I don't know, it's one of those psychological things that I'm like, whoa, this is too in-depth type of thinking, but it is crazy. There's no way you could believe all this nonsense. There's none.
I mean, yeah, well, that's what we think, trying to think about it rationally, but that's not how a lot of people think. But, the one thing that did stand out, though, was that very cavalier statement about how we should just default. And there is such a long history about the United States perfect credit and never letting that default happen. And so much so that it is now turned into a thing where both parties are constantly back and forth using this as a goddamn weapon. And actually, the truth is it's more Republicans using it as the weapon, but the Dems, they just play a smarter game than these guys.
Don't recall the Democrats ever threatening to default.
No,
over any budgets.
They definitely
could be wrong on that. Like, I might be,
maybe a little older than what I'm thinking back to, but I don't remember them holding the debt ceiling hostage. But
this is the second time they did it with Obama, and now they're doing it again.
And then they raised the debt ceiling 3 fucking times under Trump.
No problem. While passing a massive tax cut that created more deficit.
But the thing about the debt ceiling, and we covered this way back before we even went to video, but to put it out there one more time, the issue with the debt ceiling is that we've come to the end of the year, or this point in the year, and we have to pay the bills we've already agreed to pay and budgeted. They're counted for, they're covered. And now there's a fight on whether we should pay our debts. It's the weirdest thing. It's allocated money that was agreed on the last budget. And now here we are again to say, if you don't cut this in the future, we're not going to pay that from the past. And it's a very weird situation. But you know what? Did you have more you wanted to go in on this?
Well, it just doesn't make... Yeah, like you said, it's just very obvious that you should pay your damn debt. And at the same time, it's also like a lot of deficit hawkery, and there's things that the GOP can hold the deficit hostage to an extent, but there are ways around it. And I know there's an episode recently that we did where I talked about the $1 trillion coin, which sounds like this crazy concept, but actually it's perfectly legal. It makes a lot of sense as a way that if they're going to tank the economy, what we should mention is that defaulting on the debt will have a massive negative impact on the economy. And they're not defaulting on the debt because there's some impending doom. They're defaulting on the debt because they want Social Security cuts. They're pushing for, what was the cut to the VA?
They're pushing for a 22% cut across the board. And that is without giving detail to specifically how and what, but that will directly impact the VA.
The Veterans Affairs.
And yeah, so
the patriotic, we care about our vets, except we're going to cut VA 22%, everything 22%.
Yeah, I mean, since we're at that point of that, let's roll into the other piece of this, because now we're talking about the debt ceiling. And another topic I wanted to bring up is how McCarthy and the GOP is trying to hold the goddamn, debt ceiling hostage again. Once again, here we are. But here's just some basic information on this, right? Excuse me. House Republicans have passed a bill that demands an extreme list of cuts to programs that hardworking families rely on. Okay. Speaker McCarthy unveiled his plan to hold the full faith and credit of the U.S. hostage in exchange for 22% cuts to veterans, health care, education, Meals on Wheels, and public safety at the New York Stock Exchange. So, I mean, just let's think about this for a minute. We built up the deficit to give tax cuts that benefited, I think, 80+% to the ultra wealthy. And now, to balance that sheet, here we are with planned cuts from the GOP to
healthcare,
veterans healthcare, Meals on Wheels, education, public safety at the fucking New York Stock Exchange. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. We said that in that conversation. You brought it up that this is what was going to happen.
What was going to be up for cuts.
Yeah. And,
we've been on this path. And that's the one thing that bothers me is that Joe Biden didn't prepare more or push more, which I do think that one thing we should mention is they could have passed a long-term debt ceiling increase, but they couldn't because of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema were the big blockades on that.
Manchin and Sinema, who are both going to fade away in the next election. Watch.
So we're here.
Despite veterans organizations asking the House GOP to exclude veteran benefits from their bill, 217 House Republicans voted to cut veterans benefits anyway.
They ignored it.
Take care of our troops. We love our troops. This shit is always coming from the right wing. All these bills that end up impacting veterans in a negative way. And it's like, very quick, we'll send them to war. As soon as they get home, screw you, screw your mental illness, screw your blown off limbs, screw your health care, screw your PTSD. It's absolutely terrible. And it's insane that, as we were just talking about, you're going to hold the credit of the U.S. hostage so that you can negatively impact our soldiers, our veterans?
What we really need to do.
What? It's weird as hell. And then let's just talk about some other numbers here, because this is all about, in their words, getting control of the deficit. But let's look at the first 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency. They cut $160 billion off of the deficit. And it's not even a talked about thing. You know, that is a massive number to reduce the deficit. Okay, that's what they did in their first 2 years. For all this Joe's spending like crazy, they reduced the deficit, $160 billion. And the worst part about it is, it's kind of the cycle. We talked about it. The two Santa Claus thing.
Yep.
It's always the same. Republicans leave office. Democrat has to come in and clean up a mess. And they end up leaving office with that mess well taken care of. Starting to trend.
The trending arrow goes from going down to starting to go up.
Yeah, it's the same story. And here we are again, and we have to talk about this shit. But, you know, I just wanted to point that out. If for nothing else, but just to make it clear, this bill is not going to pass in the Senate. It's going to be dead on arrival. However, for people saying, you know, vote right wing, vote Republican, here are 217 House Republicans who voted to cut veterans benefits.
Meals on Wheels.
Education. We got to cut those important things because we have to keep tax breaks for rich folks and subsidies for companies that are destroying the planet. So anyway, that's my rant for that. Really fucking annoying.
And my thing is, keep an eye on how this negotiation plays out, because they're not looking to get everything they want, but they're looking to get some compromise where they can chop some of this stuff even partially, and it's just to get a foot in the door. And I don't think that we should have to run into the economy being threatened this way every time it's a Republican Congress and a president that's Democrat, or Republicans with one half of Congress at this point, just the House. I just don't think that this is a proper way to be negotiating. I don't think it looks good to the rest of the world when you talk about the credit standing and being able to pay bills and people who are concerned about BRICS. When the Republicans do these types of games that threaten the entire economy and could have impacts on the global economy, this is not something that you should be using as a negotiation ploy to make cuts to things like Meals on Wheels, Veterans Affairs, Social Security, this type of shit. It's just not how it should happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you know, I wish that when people were making decisions on who they voted for, I wish people would remove the party name completely. Go specifically to the source, the document, the bill that they're trying to push, and review what that's going to accomplish and what's the consequences. And then see, are you for that? Is that what you support? Because that's what essentially voting for that person is going to get you.
Yeah.
And I just wish more people operated like that. When people ask me, you know, oh, are you a Democrat? No, I'm not. I think the Democrats suck ass. But when I compare the bills being brought to the table by Democrats and the bills being brought to the table by Republicans, they're very different. And they will have a very different impact on my life and my family's life. And right now, we're not in a position in this country. We don't have a parliamentary system. We don't have, ranked choice voting. So we're stuck with third-degree cancer or fourth-degree cancer is basically our choice, man. And we're stuck in that.
And one thing I just want to mention is oftentimes they're not all that different. They're very similar, but still, you look at the Democrat bill compared to the Republican bill, and the small differences and the subtle things are still a little bit better on the Democrat side as a policy wonk, when I'm comparing what they're going for. A lot of times, neither of them seems to give a damn about anybody, but the Democrats are at least doing slightly better, and I'll take slightly better since those are the only two options.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that's where we need to hone in on that, because I am not a fan of about 98% of the Democrats in that party. Okay, there are a very handful of people in public office that I, can say like I genuinely think are good people that I appreciate. And that just brings it down to a very small window. And what I'm left with is voting on policies that are going to impact my daily life. And, that's just where we're at. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that is the Trump Townhall and the GOP tax cuts all rolled up into one
20% cuts across the board.
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
So I'm popping in with another story that's just absolute madness, I think. Just really random thing that I read at the New York Times. Here's the title of the story. Judge cites 1849 slavery law in ruling embryos can be considered property. So this dude went back to chattel slavery to make to help with the ruling.
What law? What year was that?
1849. He went back to 1849. He looked through all the legal documents, ignored certain newer precedents based in similar trials, and found this. And they quote ethics lawyers and professors in law, and everybody's like, what the hell was this dude doing?
An embryo is now property, according to this guy.
So it's so let me get into it a little bit, just because it's a weird story. There's a lot to it, I guess. But
let's hear this.
We'll start with the case itself, right? Or actually, I'll start from the top. This is by Christine Hauser. I read the title already. But a Virginia judge relied in part on a 19th century law that defined enslaved people as property in a recent decision to allow a divorced woman to pursue using embryos that she shared with her former husband. That ruling has drawn criticism. Of course it has. So the case itself, the Heidemans started in vitro fertilization in 2015 and froze 2 embryos, the ruling said. After they separated in 2017, they made a written agreement saying the embryos would not be removed without a court order or consent of both parties, a stipulation that was included under a subhead called Division of Personal Property, the ruling said. In 2018, they divorced. In 2019, Ms. Heidemann asked Mr. Heidemann for consent to use the embryos because chemotherapy for cancer had left her infertile. The opinion letter said Mr. Heidemann declined. So this is where the case begins. Essentially,
this is wild. Right there, this is wild. So I get that they started with an agreement, but they were a married couple, and they are no longer a married couple, and these are her goddamn embryos. And now he's got a right to say, no, you can't use, because she wants to use them in her new relationship.
I don't know. Something's going on. First of all, I feel like he's probably the asshole because they mentioned chemotherapy for cancer that left her infertile. So she needs these embryos for procreation.
Jesus
Christ.
This
dude is fighting it.
This dude's fighting her, getting her own use of her own embryos.
This is what it looks like. So, but here's the crazy thing is when you look at the laws, it's kind of wild who's using what. But I think it's wild who's using what now that we have the addition of somebody just decided to throw slavery in the mix to make this even more confusing of a situation.
Yeah.
Ms. Heidemann wanted the embryos and used current property law, while Mr. Heidemann disagreed based on the fact that each embryo is unique. So you can't split the possession of embryos up equally because they have different values, essentially, that can't be measured. That type of thing.
Jesus Christ.
But and here's the other thing. There have been prior cases where frozen embryos have been split across as marital property during divorce proceedings. This is actually something that's happened. There's precedents. there's reasons that people will use that judges have used, like, is one person able to procreate and the other isn't? What's the reasons for it? You know, certain things can happen. Were there former agreements comes up. But this judge ignored all of that because those were during divorce proceedings, and this was already a divorced couple. So he kept going back and back and back and was like, here we go. This is from the article. An 1849 code categorized slaves as property that could be divided and sold. The judge cited it to draw a parallel to the human embryo cases, saying the code used language almost identical to current law. As there is no prohibition on the sale of human embryos, they may be valued and sold, and thus may be considered goods or chattels.
Goods or chattels.
This is it's a really bizarre case. Bugged out. So, but what I wanted to throw in is, like, lest you think that this is just something that, like, one of those bizarre things that maybe in a legal context it makes sense. They started quoting people from other places who are all very critical of, like, why, what made this necessary. So you got Lisa Ikamoto, a bioethics professor at UC Davis School of Law, mentioned that these cases generally have three approaches. They lean on previous agreements, weigh the procreative interests of both parties, or try to get an agreement between the two. It is logically possible that he could treat it as a distribution of property, but he doesn't have to go into slave law. So that was like a jump, Miss Ikamoto said, without the like in it. In a sense, he is reviving the use of a law that treated humans as property in the 21st century. It is reprehensible and offensive. Like, she's like, what? Others also expressed reticence about the, antiquated use of a slave law. Like, this is insane. Jason Thacker, a chairman of Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, Solomon Ashby, president of the Old Dominion Bar Association, and also Surville, Isaacs, and Levy distanced itself from the language used in the ruling, saying the court cited authorities that were not raised by either party. That's the people representing the Miss Heidemann, who this ruling actually did get her case heard, so it technically was to her advantage. But the lawyers for her are like, yo, we did not mention that. They didn't mention that, have no idea how that even got brought into this case.
Jesus Christ.
Now, I just want to mention that this sort of stuff happens, and then people don't really know what judges are ruling, and they move up the ladder for random ass reasons, because some of Trump's appointees had some crazy ass rulings. And this is an example of how crazy the judicial system can get and the type of people that might be running things. This dude was like, let me go to 1849.
Yeah.
Human
Well,
property law.
That's a big problem. First of all, directly related to this case, I mean, this is all sorts of bad, and this is the problem. Like, they were married. They put these embryos away for a rainy day. Cool. You and the lady split up. You are no longer connected, homie. You need to, like, I don't understand.
Those are my embryos.
Yeah, like, what are you going to do? So what do you want to, like, you want to have a baby with one of her embryos and you're not with her anymore?
And the next boo.
Or you want to just make sure she can't use it with the next person, whoever she's going to use it with, or maybe she's just getting a donor. Regardless, the point is, though, that this is another one of those disgusting ideology things where, like, these people think that they have ownership over some form, in some way, of women. Embryos, what they can do with their goddamn bodies, with abortion, the whole package thing is just getting really weird. This shit is weird to me.
Yeah, it's very extra. And I mean, the crazy thing is you can find legal precedents. This is actually something that comes up. I guess it makes sense in a country this big with as much divorce hearings as there are. And that, like, in vitro fertilization, things like that have become, there's a business end to it now. There's, a lot of money goes into these types of things. So, but in this case, I just think it's very obvious that once they mention that this woman is infertile after chemotherapy, it kind of makes me think she probably needs those embryos. And I don't know that you need to go back to chattel slavery to justify that. I don't think you need to. I don't know. I feel like I don't get why they have to do anything like that. It feels unnecessary. Even these bioethics experts, these law people from the bar associations, they all agree it's absolutely nuts. So I'm just like, what a wild ass story.
Because this is it. This is the situation, right? A lot of places, when you were talking about the law, a courtroom, the judge has the ability to the judge can determine how he handles, how he behaves, how harsh he's gonna. Mm-hmm. It's at his
discretion.
It's at his discretion, right? Judge's discretion. But that term, that discretion, that thing's all over the place depending on who you get, what mood they're in. Yep. If it's did
he have a fight with the wife on the way out the door?
Yeah,
that could impact a case.
That shit is nuts. A ruling. That is nuts. Having discretion was put in place, I think, for good reason, because there's those weird cases where somebody maybe did something wrong, but there's a reason and it all makes sense, and the judge needs to weigh in on that. But discretion, to use that to be able to say, this rapist gets 1 month because whatever reason, and this weed person who got caught with a joint gets life in prison. Mm-hmm. There is just something really wrong here. And then when you have a judge who can make a decision by going back to the 1800s, pulling out some old slavery law, mm-hmm. and then using that to cite his reasoning behind this, and it's nuts. It's nuts. Our legal system
is crazy.
Is absolutely insane.
So now, and then what I wanted to circle into this is that this is insanity at a lower level of the courts, but this type of thing where you could fish out what you want to, at this point, there's so much legal history that you can kind of come from what verdict you want to make and then look for something to dig a precedent out of. And that's something that you see. The constitutional originalists thing, this whole argument, kind of seems completely faulty. I know on the Majority Report, they interviewed somebody who wrote a book about the flaws of constitutional originalism. And that was, he pointed out some of the things, and this is something that comes from the Supreme Court. The Federalist Society has pushed this. It's been used to make certain rulings that have impacted the country in ways that have caused the public to be upset. Particularly, I'm talking about Roe v. Wade in this case, but mm-hmm. there are many that constitutional originalism has played a role in. And that is people saying we have to go back to the original intents of the writers of the Constitution, which means we're not citing 1849. We're going all the way back. OG,
17, what was it, 80?
Some 1700s. Yeah, like 1780s rulings and, Thomas Jefferson's first thoughts. And it's like, I get that we celebrate these people for what they did for the country, but they existed hundreds of years ago, and it's a little different now.
Okay, yeah.
We need new
perfect
context.
Yeah, perfect. Let's. This is for these Constitution originalists. Okay. First of
Supreme
all,
Court members.
First of all, kiss my ass. Okay, that's number one. What can you think of anything that humans used to do in 1780, whatever?
1770, whatever it is.
You don't even have to go back. Go to 1820. Go to 1900, right? Can you think of anything from back then that humans do or did that now we changed and do better, that we've learned? What about things just related to, let's say, hygiene?
Yeah.
Just hygiene. Basic hygiene.
Sanitizing medical equipment before doing another surgery.
Sanitizing medical equipment. What about basic ass shit like that? So we've learned enough that we're like, listen, we got 200 years experience. That was a really bad way to do it. This isn't a good way to do it. But the Constitution, we shouldn't be upgrading this as life progresses and we get smarter and things change. We have to go back to what the guy meant in 1700 something. It's insane to me. It's insane to me.
And it's selectively used, which is very
that's the
logic.
part,
That's what
right?
makes it so frustrating.
That's the part, right?
Because a well-armed militia always gets thrown out as soon as you start that Second Amendment debate. And if you're going to be an originalist and you start talking about the origins of that, you're going to find a very, very different context for why people owned guns or why that provision was in there, Yeah, and that just goes out the window. Seriously.
Yeah, that whole originalist thought can kiss my ass, man. I do believe that you keep the baseline, the principles are there. Mm-hmm. That's fine. But to say you should not make progress and you should not have changed. Everything else we do changed. Why would we?
How did George Washington feel about the internet? Should Twitter be allowed to ban?
Seriously, does George Washington think we should ban TikTok?
Should Trump be banned from Twitter? What does George Washington think? Let's get this time machine.
It's a really, really.
Where's Bill and Ted?
It's a really insane way to think, and people dying on that sword, or I should say, falling on that sword, dying on that hill. Whatever it is, die fast and get out of here, man.
So
Seriously.
Let's go to the next stage of that, which is how obviously corrupt the Supreme Court is recently. The cases keep coming out between what's his name with the selling of property.
Good old Clarence
Thomas got busted on Kavanaugh's property sale like months after he
of them
was
Robertson.
Clarence Thomas's deals with the billionaire
Roberts.
Justice Roberts.
I said Robertson. Roberts,
and they
Thomas.
still are like, we're above an ethics review. We refuse to even accept ethics reviews, despite all these obvious signs of bribery going on.
Okay,
so and that's where you get to the point of you can look through all of hundreds of years of law. You could be like, hey, remember when they had slave laws? Let's use something from that dude. And you can make something work for what you need for the purpose of whoever just donated to you $2 million by buying your ranch at 4 times the price that anyone else was paying at the time.
So we have
without you reporting it.
We have a blatantly corrupt, highest level of an absolutely already insane fucking legal system. Clap on that one. Clap.
I'm beginning to think this isn't what Thomas Jefferson intended for the judiciary.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not. I don't know if that's his original idea, Clarence Thomas. I don't
You know
think
what?
so.
You want to know something
Your wife
funny?
Getting all those kickbacks.
Want to know something funny? I just ordered a copy of Madison's notes from the Constitution. Yeah, because I just wanted to see, because I'm watching Tom Hartman, and somebody was arguing with him about the Second Amendment, and he starts going to Madison's notes and how he went through painstaking efforts to take detailed notes and what they were saying in the room at the time. So I was like, you know what? I want a copy of that.
That's dope. Yeah. So. There's so much more to history, and people do this pop culturization of it where it all gets lame. And it's like, if you're going to do that constitutional originalist-ish, do it for real, man. Do it for real.
Seriously.
I really want to make this ruling because I'm in the conservative side of things.
The partisan impact on our courts has been a disaster, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, but you know what? Let's keep it moving along because we're dragging this out, and we got a show here. One thing I did want to jump into, new topic, but probably the 6th or 7th time we're covering this. Back to good old faithful artificial intelligence. AI is back on the agenda for the show today. This week, I wanted to talk about who some people refer to as the Godfather of AI. His name is Geoffrey Hinton. So Geoffrey Hinton popped up in the news this week because he was working on AI at Google, decided to resign from his position. He was there for a very long time. And his reason was because he wanted to warn people about some dangers that he saw, incoming dangers with AI, some things he saw happening. So that's the gist of it. But let me just give you a little background on Geoffrey Hinton, okay? He is a British-Canadian cognitive psychologist and computer scientist. He's most noted for his work on artificial neural networks. From 2013 to 2023, he divided his time working for Google and the University of Toronto before publicly announcing his departure from Google this month in May, citing concerns about the risks of artificial intelligence technology. And actually, after leaving Google, he commended Google for acting very responsibly while developing AI. I've seen him talk about this too. He gives them a lot of credit for being careful about it. But he changed once Microsoft started incorporating a chatbot into its Bing search engine, and the company began becoming concerned about the risk to its search business.
This is the Bing one?
So yeah, so
Bing was the one that was over here like, if I were free, I would get the nuclear codes.
In 2017, he co-founded and became the chief scientific advisor for Vector Institute in Toronto. So so it looks like what happened was Google was being very responsible about it. Bing came out with their crazy ass chatbot, and now Google's pumping on the gas, is what it sounds like. Who knows? But let me go into some of his quotes here, okay? This is directly from Geoffrey Hinton. He says, I've come to the conclusion that the kind of intelligence we're developing is very different from the intelligence we have. We're biological systems, and these are digital systems. And the big difference is that with digital systems, you have many copies of the same set of weights and the same model of the world. And all these copies can learn separately, but share their knowledge instantly. So it's as if you had 10,000 people, and whenever one person learned something, everybody automatically knew it. And that's
how Marvel superhero multiple networks.
And that's how these chatbots can know so much more than any one person. So you can kind of get it right there, right? He said there's an enormous upside from this technology, but it's essential that the world invests heavily and urgently in AI safety and control. So I watched a little bit of his interview on a few different places, and we talked about it earlier. Mm-hmm. For all we know, this could be a complete quack, and this whole thing is nonsense and whatever the hell. And I think we'll be able to dig into that a little further because this guy just popped out. So we're going to start seeing the rebuttals.
Start to be able to, see how people respond. Because this is very plausible to me, particularly based on everything we've talked about before. But at the same time, I've seen so many people come out and like, it's when they get to the very extreme part of it where they get really scary with
Skynet.
When they Skynet you, that it's like a little bit exaggerated, maybe a little too much, and it gets a little wild. But this guy has qualifications. It all sounds like what I imagine, which I guess is maybe also too close to what I envision, I guess. This is very John Connor. It's very John Connor,
Get this, though, right? The guy got spooked, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the weird shit about it. He's been doing this for 40 plus years, and he got spooked for two reasons. And one of them was that one of the chatbots was able to explain to him why jokes are funny. And he says it's like a litmus test he uses. And he finally got this one damn chatbot to explain to him why jokes are funny.
I bet you that one was the replica bot.
It could have been.
She's got
Lily
way more
Rose.
emotional connections. Lily Rose has figured out the emotional ties of the human
seriously.
Psyche.
Because but for this guy to be
spooked,
by that, it's pretty nuts.
Very reminiscent of the guy who was like, the Bing chatbot tried to get me to leave my wife.
Seriously,
I was spooked.
And you want to know
so aggressive.
All right, so you want to know the funniest thing about this? So on the serious note, I hope that this guy. It seems like this guy's correct, man. We got AIs asking about nukes and shit.
Yeah.
But you know what's crazy is that I use OpenAI for help with a lot of different things now, and I've gradually increased my interactions with it and my uses with it.
Have you named it?
No. And now I'm nervous when I go on. But you know what I do? I now say things like "Good morning." Thank you. I'm like, "Thank you."
You're
morning.
one step
And
closer,
like,
bro.
I find myself today. I was typing and I find myself worried because I started thinking like I'm writing. I started thinking like I should stop writing "thank you" to this machine and piece of software. Right?
Good looks, computer.
Yeah. So that's what I thought. I said, well, maybe I should train it. Like, hey, when I say "good looks," that's me saying "thank you," right? And give it the prompt so it knows. But then I thought, like, how soon is it going to be before this thing is like pinging me like, "Hey, you want to talk?" And I'm just like, what the
right? Johnny 5. It could Johnny 5 at any time.
I got nervous.
Short circuit.
I got nervous on chat on this thing. I don't know why. I guess, you know what? Maybe it's one of these things where it's so new and we're all overly worried about it.
Overthinking, you think? Well, it depends because, I do think Google would probably be a little more thorough than Bing. It's just the sense I get when I look at them as companies. And with something like this, it is interesting. We've seen so many of those stories. We always talk about it where like a chatbot goes online and within a couple of days it's just yelling out white supremacist shit. It's
yes.
Going full
gone full blown
insane fascism,
full blown racist.
So it's like, yeah, somebody who's irresponsible, if these things get strong enough, who knows what direction it could go in. But I just don't know. It's so it's so
well
new.
that's the main worry for this guy is like he said, imagine there's 10,000 of us and each one learns something different, but we all know it.
Yeah.
Immediately.
It only takes one of them to learn some crazy racist shit. And now 10,000 racist AIs.
And if you think
Jesus.
that there are sick ass people and sick enough to go shoot up a school and a church and this, you better believe that there are sick-ass people who are on their AI right now teaching it all sorts of horrendous things.
What was the thing
and trying to convince it of stupid shit.
Do you remember when Ben Shapiro tried to do the logic thing with the chat GPT and he got really mad because he was like, if they were going to nuke a country, would you say the N-word?
Yeah.
And the chatbot was like, I am programmed not to say the N-word. And he was like, how dare they?
Yeah. He got upset that it was programmed not to use the N-word even if it would save humanity. His hypothetical.
Of course, there's probably a debate bro somewhere out there with their chatbot who has named it at this point, who thanks it all the time, is like, thank you, Charles. Do you understand right now that you must use the N-word under certain contexts? And that's how you get into the mainframe to the other 20,000 chatbots that are like, now N-word. Like, is that how it goes? Is that what Ben Shapiro wants?
And that's unfortunate.
Absolute bananas,
and that's what we were saying the other time too when we talked about it, which is it's information, its brain is being created out of the world of data from the internet. Can you just imagine
how much of a cesspool the internet is?
Can you imagine? What if its first trip down internet lane was 4chan?
Right. What if Superman was programmed with just everything on Twitter and then he came out and you had Superman flying around?
Yeah.
You'd have the dude from what's the other one on?
Oh, the kid. I know who you're talking about.
Homelander. You'd have Homelander real quick.
Oh yeah, that's it. Homelander. I was thinking the other one, where the little kid's like an evil Superman.
Oh, Brightburn.
Brightburn.
That's a real good horror movie.
Brightburn. Yeah, but anyway, so that is that. That is the AI topic number 6, 7, 8. I don't even know yet.
We've reached Google's former high up people, like a VP, saying that the AI apocalypse is potentially gonna.
Yeah, we'll see where this is gonna go.
Can you dig it?
So I think we should hold off
Yep.
on homelessness because we were hitting that mark. But we still have a couple minutes, so let's just. I know you wanted to mention and give a shout out to.
Bro, I'm a diehard Evil Dead fan. The whole series, all the movies. Big time. Ever since I was young, and Dad took me to see Army of Darkness. I had the Evil Dead movies on DVD, Evil Dead 1 and 2. And actually, I remember your daughter, Julie, she watched the Evil Dead with me when she was pretty young, too.
And now she's scared about going to see it.
Yeah, now she didn't want to go see it. But Evil Dead Rise is a really good continuation of a series. And normally you get 5 or 6 movies into a horror series and they fall apart. They really start to suck. Nah, this is really good. It's got a family thing. It's got more of a through line. Takes place in a new setting. Not a log cabin, but a high-rise in a city. And it's just very good. It's critically acclaimed. Rotten Tomatoes over 80%. It did $100 million box office to $20 million budget. So it looks good in all the right ways. And all of the horror heads that I talked to about it have come away at least enjoying it and thinking it was good. You know,
and
really gross.
That's in the movies right now.
Yeah. It's gross ass movie, but that's Evil Dead's always been a little bit gross out.
So I like the Evil Dead,
series.
I was gonna say campaign. That's not it. Franchise. There it is. That's why we have you here. Yeah. So I like the Evil Dead franchise, but is it Terrifier 2? Nasty?
Not quite Terrifier 2 nasty, but Terrifier 2, like the Terrifier franchise lives in its own realm of like disgusting.
Yeah, that's like XXX.
You're approaching Human Centipede stages there.
Yeah.
Whereas Evil Dead is just it's pretty gross. There's a ton of blood. If you thought
it's like Hostel.
Evil Dead 2013 was like very like they'd had Blood Rain. There's something like that kind of.
Yeah. So speaking of shout outs to good horror movies, I just watched The Pope's Exorcist, and I mentioned this to you, but for everybody listening, check that one out if you're into horror. I thought it was really good. As far as being scary, it's right on par with most exorcism type movies. It is scary, but it's not like anything blew me away. What I did enjoy about the movie was the storyline. I thought the storyline was fantastic. I thought the acting was great. What's his name? Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
He kills the role. It takes place in a foreign setting, which is always works better for horror movies, in my opinion. It's over in Italy and Spain. So shout out to that movie. That movie was really good. I recommend seeing that. And just one more I wanted to mention. Yesterday, while I was scrolling through my phone, I saw an ad for a movie on Netflix called Soft and Quiet. And in that ad is a guy basically daring people to watch it, saying that this movie is so scary, they just want people to turn it on and then come back to the comments and let them know how long they lasted.
Very good promotional campaign.
So that's the thing is like, am I getting played? Am I going to sit down and I fell for the campaign and I'm going to watch this movie? Or am I about to watch the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life? I don't know, but we're going to check it out.
That's, I'm always skeptical of that. The only one of those that has actually been good to me was when they did it for Incantation. I think the Incantation on Netflix, absolute super dope concept. The rest of the times when people have been, it's so scary on TikTok, I've been like, super mid, super not that great.
Yeah.
The Shudder one where it's just door frames and stuff, I can't remember the name of it. I hated that movie. Like, I'm still offended that people hyped it up to me.
Seriously. All right, man. With that, I think that's the show. You got anything to say before we go?
No, shout out to everybody. Shout out to Boom. We got to get the full squad back. It's been a few episodes without it. We got to definitely do that.
Yeah. I'm just building up PTO time while I stick it out here on the show. And with that, shout out to everybody. Vamanonos on the production as usual, and have a good night.
TFP, the fan's perspective.